That was kicked off by Tom in, I think it was May 2019. And it was put together because this Croydon had released this project or set it out for bidding. And so we formed the CLT, we bid on this project, and then in September we were told we had won the bid. And that's where the work started. So effectively, we've been working at this for over 3 years now. We're just about to go, well, we've just submitted the document you will see as our second pre-app document. And this will then lead on to the final planning application document. So the pre-app is a way or a tool in which you take a scheme to the planners and they comment on it. You then go back, look at the comments, reshuffle what you're doing and try and address them, and then go back to the planners and say, okay, either we're going to submit a planning application or we're going to do another pre-app. And so we've done two. This is the second one. Following this pre-app, we will then go to planning. And so what effectively I'm going to show you is I'm going to take you through the pre-application document. Which you should see on your screen at the moment. So this is pre-app number 2. This is done by our architects, Archeo. And while we have consultants on board who help us put these things together, everybody else in the CLT are volunteers. And so you can imagine over the last 3.5 years, we've put in a huge amount of time and effort into this project. It should have gone quicker than this. We should have had planning by now, but obviously COVID came along and slowed things down. And then there have been the issues with Croydon Council, the internal issues. And so we're not kind of a priority compared to all the stuff they have to deal with. But we are very close now to signing a key document, which is the agreement to lease for the lawns. And then once we submit the planning application and get approval, we will then get the site. So the site is not ours at the moment. The agreement to lease will simply state that if we are successful with the planning application, the site becomes ours for £1, and then we need to actually execute the scheme that we're proposing. So I'll start it. It's 30 pages, and some of it I'm going to skim over quite quickly, otherwise we'll be here for a very long time. So the client brief. So this is the brief that we put together for the architects and for our consultants. At the moment, we've got architects, we've got passive house consultant involved, planners, planning consultant, and a few others, cost consultant as well. And then, but this is the key document that drives the brief. And so the key kind of aim of the project was to, obviously the key aim is to create affordable housing. So we're a non-for-profit organization. Anything we can do in terms of housing, especially affordable housing. And when we say affordable, we mean truly affordable. So, you know, we were hoping to achieve kind of 60%. Actually, initially we were hoping to go below market rental. But as we go through this document, you'll kind of understand the stuff we're up against and why we have gone where we've gone. So we had great hopes, we had some serious goals in the beginning of this process, and we will still achieve some of them. They may not go as far as we'd like, but this is a very challenging site and very, very challenging times. And we're still going to be able to deliver something that's pretty amazing. So I'll just quickly introduce you to the site. This is one of the first community engagement events that actually Croydon hosted when they were initially going to hand the site over to us. And this road is the lawns. Our site is the area marked in white. And this document is part of the initial community engagement we had with the local residents. So we set up a picnic table, invited everybody else to come in from the local area and to talk to us about what their fears were, what their hopes were for the site. And it was extremely useful. And then we collated all that information and kind of used it to develop this project further. And so again, we're still within the community development. We then put together a residential design group, which I think were up to approximately 15 people, all local residents to Crystal Palace. And this group helped us and the architects formulate or identify the key drivers for what they wanted on this site. And so you can see here is the key document. And out of the residential design group, or the residence design group, the key driver was affordability. Everybody felt affordability was the most important thing here. The second most important thing was sustainability or environmental credentials. And so that's the brief the architect then left with. So make this as affordable as possible, but also make sure that it's as sustainable as possible. And one of our initial aims was to aim for passive house, but not, we never assumed we would achieve it, but we needed a really good benchmark to try and achieve or to aim for. And so that is still an aim. So we won't make passive house, but we will work towards something along those lines. And then the third priority that the residential design group identified was community. They wanted us to create something which would give the community something back. So we weren't just developing the land, the community would retain something of that site. And obviously it became challenging when we had COVID, so we started doing this via Zoom as everybody else was doing, but managed to keep moving the project forward. A little bit more about the site. So some of you might know Spa Hill. And off Spa Hill, quite close to the top, you've got the lawns, and our site is this triangular shape at the bottom. You've got the Lawns Park above, there's Grange Road on the opposite side, and this road is a cul-de-sac. So the lawns itself is a cul-de-sac, and we're right at the end of the cul-de-sac. And this was a piece of land that Croydon identified, Croydon and Brick by Brick at that stage had identified. And the site is a challenging site. So there's a 7 to 9 meter, depending on what information you're looking at, drop across the site. So that creates lots of challenges and impacts viability and cost hugely for us. But when we took this on, we realized that this would be a difficult site, but we thought it would be a useful exercise to cut our teeth on. And then just quickly looking at the constraints. So major parking issues on the road, the lawns, and we've obviously got this fall. Right next to our site, we've got this block of flats, and our site is this red line. So we're right against the block of flats. And if you can imagine, these people that live here actually have windows that look across our site. So this is somebody's living room right over here, or bedroom. So these are things we clearly need to take a very, very good note of. And then we've got houses across the road. Here is the road coming across, and there's a kind of turning circle because there's the cul-de-sac. So there's a hammered or turning circle at the end. And our site has a really big tree that we have to keep, and falls towards 7 meters, or the 9 meters is across from high point on this side to a low point over here in the bottom corner. And then I'm just going to quickly rush through these constraints, but I think it's useful for you to kind of understand what the challenges are here. So again, we have underground drainage running across the site along the boundary. We have another stormwater sewer going across the site here. We've got our oak tree that I've mentioned, got the drop, we've got the neighbors on this side, we've got local residents sit overlooking our site on this, along this edge. And then obviously we've got these residents on Beauchamp Road as well, which falls away from us. So they're well below the site at this level. And then in terms of planning separation, different distances. So these are key planning issues. So with these windows on this elevation, they really don't want you to develop anything within 18 meters of that, of those windows. And again, on this side, these the orange hatch kind of denotes the limitations under planning of where we can develop something. So you can already see. So if you look at this, you can see where, you know, we can't develop on these lines here. We get to the next slide, we can't really develop over here. And so you start understanding how constrained the site is. And so the architects put together this constraint map, and it basically shows this orange area is really the only area we can build. So based on that, they then have to deliver their brief. And then they look at the challenges the site has. So sometimes everything's not all that negative. They're massive positives. So we've got great views. We are southwest facing or south facing. So we've got lots of solar gain we can take advantage of. Long edge across the lawns that we can utilize as well. So there are positives to the site. And then looking at how the architects would tackle this. So they've kind of identified an area where we can't build. They've looked at these neighbors and said, we should really have the short end of the building facing these guys so that we don't interrupt their views too much. This building has to miss this tree, and maybe we could have views looking onto the tree or onto this greened area. We've got to make sure we're keeping away from this corner as well. And so you can see how the site constraints start pushing the building form in a direction. And then this is the first pre-app document we put together. So the scheme we came up with was for 8 units, so 8 flats. Now, when we started this process, right at the beginning when we put our bid document in, we actually thought what we'd do is build 4 houses on this site in a nice row, and there would be 3-bedroom house. There would be a mix of 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and a 1-bedroom house. We'd make use of the site. But once you start looking at cost, viability, planning issues, 4 units were just not going to stack. And so there was a scheme on the site under Brick by Brick that looked at 12 to 13, but we certainly weren't comfortable with those numbers. And so we kind of felt that 7 or 8 would be where we'd need to be to make it viable, financially viable. The more financially viable the site is, the lower the cost is to the people who own these units. And so that's kind of the driver behind the number of units. Anyway, so we're looking at, in this scheme, we had 4 1-bedroom flats, 3 2-bedroom flats, and 1 3-bedroom flat. And then obviously, because they're flats, they stack. And so this is kind of the building in the shadow line here. And this is just a very simple form. This is not actually the building. This is what we would call a massing diagram. So it just shows the volume of a building that consists of those those units, kind of what the size would be. We went to the planners and said, this is what we've got. What do you think? And we got pushback in the meeting, which we kind of expected. But so the planner said, building's too big. You can't have that. They didn't like this high element over here, this 4-story element. They said, we're also way too close to these guys, a little bit too close to these guys, way too close to the tree. And they felt that we weren't really taking advantage of the site because obviously it slopes, and so you can build on the lower ends. You can build it higher at the lower end to take advantage of that. So we took that away, sat down again and had another think. And this is kind of the site strategy that the architects then developed based on that, the feedback from pre-app 1. And so it meant we had to squeeze the building into this kind of area, pull it away from these guys, pull it away from these guys, pull it away from the tree, reduce the height. The height also impacted on the guys on Beauchamp Road. So reduce the height, and those things then kind of feed back into the only way we can reduce the height is to lose a flat. And if we lose a flat, how do we do that? So we then developed, sorry, that's my puppy playing with a toy. So this is scheme number 2. This is scheme number 1, and they're really here for comparisons. So scheme number 2, we reduced. So we started off with 8 flats. We now have gone back with 7, and we've got something like 5 1-bedroom flats and 3 2-bedroom flats. So not quite what we'd like, but in terms of cost, this is where we need to be. And in terms of planning, this is closer to what they want. And what we've done is we've pulled this corner away from 36 to 46, the lawns. We've pulled this edge away, and also by chamfering the corners, we've reduced the impact on these residents. We've moved the entrance and the path so that it's much shorter and easier to access the units. We've pulled units again away from the tree. And there was also a question about parking spaces, and I felt some of these were really too close to the tree. And so we pulled them back off the tree and changed the position of the hammerhead. So we feel, I'm just quickly going through to see what else we've got on these slides. So in terms of height, we feel we've really addressed the concerns. So this is the first scheme. These are sort of context drawings where you can see the neighbors at the back on the lawns. And in the first scheme, we still felt, we weren't going too crazy. We still felt we were matching what was there. But this is scheme number 2, and we've actually reduced it by a story. So the building itself, the massing is much lower. Yes, it's got 1 less unit, but we still think we can just about squeeze the viability, but it does impact it has other impacts on cost further down, which I must probably come to later. So again, this is scheme number 1, and this is scheme number 2. So here we've lost a flat or effectively a floor, and so we're pulling down the height of the building. And this is, again, pre-app 1. So this is the scheme we went with under pre-app 1. And this is the new scheme we submitted in December, pre-app number 2. And you can again see that the scale has come down and the form has come down in size. And these are pretty much just studies, like contextual studies that the architects do to try and inform us on what this thing might look like. And I'll quickly skip through those. And then this is kind of a precedence materiality of the site. So that, with the chamfered corners, they feel it'll look something like this. We're looking at a very light colored brick with balconies on the outside. So this gives you a kind of sense of what we want this building to look like. And then these are the final kind of shots of what this might be. Again, they're quite wishy-washy, but that's on purpose because we haven't really finalized these elevations. This is a pre-app, and so you're going in there with enough information to get good feedback to change it, but you don't want to go and develop a whole scheme and then get feedback and then have to change everything. So you kind of go in with just enough to get useful information out of the planners, work through that information and go back and then resubmit. And that's pretty much it. These are internal layouts. So we will, of the 7 flats, 1 will be, the words just lost me, accessible. 1 flat will be accessible. The others will be all 1-bedroom flats, and we've got some 2 bedrooms on. We got the 2 bedrooms on the kind of larger side. And then in terms of sustainability, we've got PV cells on the roof. We've got the materiality of the form, and the form kind of leans towards passive ice, and so will the U values, insulation, etc. It's south-facing, so we'll take advantage of sunlight, of solar gain, and make sure they don't overheat as well. Lots of good stuff, but I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to let's probably stop it there. So that's pretty much where we are, and I've done that in half an hour, so I have absolutely rushed through that. Do we have questions? I'll just go through the questions, actually. Okay.
It might be interesting. I've seen Joyce has just joined us, and
Yep.
Drew mentioned, some people who've been involved in the design process so far. If you've got any reactions to, because things have changed a bit since you last saw them.
Sorry, I'm just
You speaking to me?
Yeah, hi Joyce.
Hi,
I
just had to
tail end of it.
find my way in here. Sorry about that. I had to literally get myself on the system. Anyway, looking at this, if this is what it's going to look like, it's looking absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's been at the very beginning of it all. The way it's laid out now looks very promising. I'm really pleased to see it like this. Yeah. Even though I came in at the end.
I mean, from the initial ideas when we were talking to you as part of the residential design group, it now starts looking, or it is looking like a building that somebody could live in. You kind of really start getting a sense of it. Stephen, do you want to ask a question?
Hi all. Yeah, good to see the progress that you've made over the last sort of few months and years. Obviously, I've been fairly distant from your progress, so great to see what you've done. Just sort of wondering, I may have missed it at the start because I was slightly late in. Obviously, with the change of administration in Croydon, I know this is a project that was heavily, at least in terms of manifesto, backed by the former administration. What is the sort of music you're getting from the current administration? Because I know their stance on planning is quite different to what's gone before, and sort of is the mood still positive?
Tom, myself, and Janet went and met the mayor in December, and talked through the scheme, and the reception was brilliant. He was very, very positive. He was a little bit frustrated that we hadn't managed to get further in terms of getting the agreement to lease signed, and said he would push that. But he was very happy with what we had, and was very supportive. So we'll have to see. And then I suppose the feedback from the next prep will really give us some useful information. So we'll really understand where we stand in terms of planning that. But we feel we've kind of addressed pretty much all of the issues. There is one issue they came up with. They said they weren't happy with our mix. And when they talk about that, they're talking about the unit mix. They prefer to see 1/3 one-bedroom flats, 1/3 two-bedroom flats, 1/3 three-bedroom flats. We just can't do that on this site, and we just can't, and financially we can't do it. So that's kind of one of the issues we simply cannot address. But we feel, because every single flat will be affordable, that there's a massive positive behind this. And any standard developer developing 7 flats would not need to provide any affordable flats. We're providing 100% affordable flat. All of our flats will be affordable. So we're hoping it'll be positive. Anybody else? Any other questions? Just on affordability. So our goal for, again, out of the residential design group, affordability was the most important aspect, most important thing for them. And so what we were hoping to achieve was affordable below market rental would have been the ideal scenario for this block. Because of the viability, the cost of building this, the cost of building on a site with this much of a slope, we just can't, we can't do below market rental. We've gone through literally hundreds of variations financial viability studies, trying to work out how we can build this and how we can get this at the lowest absolute cost. Most people for affordability, well, most professionals would aim for 80%. We were hoping for 60%. That would make it truly affordable to the local community. 80% is not affordable to the local community. We don't think we know we're not going to get 60%. We're thinking we might get 70%, which is still a big win. And we are desperately trying to stay away from 80% because that's not enough. And we've put too much work in this to settle for 80% affordability. And these will be, so when we say 80%, so we're hoping for 7% below market value. And so these flats will go on sale, hopefully for 7% below market value, but they will be owned by the trust, the CLT, forever. And so we will then regulate if somebody buys this at below 7% below market, when they will sell it on to the next person at 70% below market value. And so it'll always continue for the lifetime of each of these flats. They will always be at that rate. Anything else? Any other questions?
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because one of the driving force, as always, was about affordability.
Absolutely.
And to hear what you're saying, Chris, really sort of helps to keep that vision in in my head. Yeah, that's good.
We've been very clear about what we're trying to achieve out of this, and we've stuck stuck to all of the goals we kind of set out initially. I think, Tim, you were first to put your hand up. Okay, Chris. I just wanted to clarify that it's 70% of the market value, not 100%, not 30% of the market value. 7% of, but yeah. Just needed to clarify that it's 70 over 100, not 30 over 100. So it's 70% of market value. Yeah. Okay. Robert. Robert, do you want to ask a question? No, you're good. Okay, fine.
Hi, sorry, I'd had trouble unmuting.
Okay.
So just had a really quick question. Apologies if you covered this earlier on, I may not have heard it. I just wonder whether the planners had any expectations of you designing in any features that would encourage integration with the existing community.
Yes.
Or whether you as a CLT also have any kind of expectations around that sort of integration of the lived site with the existing community.
So that's a great question. That's something I totally skipped over when I was going through my presentation. So I'll go back a little bit. So what we're doing is we're going to create a community garden in this area. So the area we can't build across and the area that these flats will face onto will be a community garden space. And the local community will be invited in to help landscape this area. Does that kind of answer your question, or have I missed the point?
No, not at all. No, that's
yeah.
I just wondered whether the planners had any particular sort of requests.
No. So this was one of the key parts of our brief right from the start. And so every presentation we've had to the planners, every discussion, that's been part of the discussion. So, but they haven't asked for anything further than that. But it's a key goal of ours.
If I could, Chris, if I could just add to that. So one of the things we heard when we did our very first engagement, door knocking on the street, and then doing that picnic that Chris mentioned, was people who live on the street at the moment generally told us it's not being particularly used as an open space. It's obviously small and very sloping, and just around the corner they've got a great park with woodland and so on. But it is sort of valued as a space that is nice to look, well, nice-ish to look at and so on. So we wanted to have something there that they still felt they could look out onto, that they could enjoy, and that maybe might also be a way for them to meet other neighbours and to, as you say, integrate people moving into this with people living in those flats. And because of our existing connection with the Transition Town, which has done lots of different community gardens, we sort of hope at that point to bring them and also the Allotment Society just over the road in to sort of think about what do people living here now want to do with this, and is that something that not just the people living in the new flats can be involved with, but people in those, you can see the neighbouring buildings, you know, they could all have some involvement in what they want to do with this space, so it's nice to look at or produces some food or whatever they want.
Yeah. Nina, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for this presentation. It's actually really informative, and it looks gorgeous, the building. Just I suppose a bit of a concern regarding the houses, the people that live in the houses across the street from it.
Yes.
Is it that one, or is it 100? Yes. So I remember speaking with some residents, and they were concerned about the height. Yeah, that's the road. Have you done any engagement? Because what was really helpful about this is getting the visual picture of what it would look like. So I can imagine it squashing any fears that anyone might have. Have you spoken with those residents, or do you have plans to show them this personally, sort of thing?
So we went door knocking down the street. I think we've done it twice to try and invite the residents to join the residents design group, and unfortunately we didn't get a great response off this street. And so, which is why we put together a residential design group. And this was submitted I think just before Christmas. So actually you all are the first people seeing this. And so, yeah, the answer is no, we haven't actually taken this scheme as it stands to the residents and showed them the scheme.
Chris, can I again, sorry, jump in and add. So
yeah,
what we intend to do, Nina, is go back to that street again before, well, in the next coming weeks or month, and share this with them and invite them to join the last meeting of that resident design group, where we'll be going back over that materials bit that Chris showed and some of those things that we can still change, that, you know, to any final tweaks before it goes into the planning system as an application. So obviously residents there always have the ability to make their views known through the planning process, but we're kind of looking to give them one more chance just to let them know. And in fact, two of the people in that terrace are members of the CLT, and at least one of them signed up to come this evening, but sadly hasn't come along. So we've kind of done everything we can to give them an opportunity to be involved in this process, to see you know, how it's unfolding, and we'll give it one last push before we go for planning.
I think that would be fantastic, because seeing the pictures, you couldn't have described it to me, and I couldn't have see what is down on paper. And I really do think if they see this, it would be really good for them, and you know, and hopefully they will support what's going on here.
Yes, I'd hope so. And I mean, when you kind of see the process and the way where this building, we're trying to make this building respond to the neighbours and to all the concerns around. So there, you know, we certainly are, and it's evident we're taking these comments on board. Even the parking issues that were initially mentioned, we're providing off-street parking for all our vehicles as well. So we won't be adding to the current parking issues on that road. But yes, and Tom leads the local community liaisons, so he's got a much better grasp of what that side is doing, or what that part of our team is doing, at least.
I'll take one more question from Tim, and then we'll wrap this up and go on to the general meeting business. because we can finish by 9.
Okay, thanks everybody. I just thought I'd remind you that actually, as part of the consultation process and the feedback we got from neighbours about the house that has been empty on that row of houses. I don't know if, Chris, you can show the one. So there, so that's the one. So here, this house here, 107. We've obviously took that up with the council, and I think Nina, you've been involved with that, and the portfolio holder as well under the previous administration in getting that brought back into use as a family home. So I believe that's on the council's capital works list now as a result of our feedback from residents. So that was a concern that they were very wanting to see brought back into use.
And I think we've been advised that they actually have now started working towards getting those houses looked at. I think there are all kinds of structural issues, and the last conversation we had with Croydon, there was discussion that those houses had now moved into a program which was looking at turning them back into homes.
Yeah.
Right, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for your questions and comments. As Joe mentions in the chat, if you would like to stay involved with this project, then I'll put a link into the chat, but the best way is to, if you haven't already, to join the CLT. If you're local, at any cost of £1 plus 23p processing charge, and you'll be on our mailing list and be able to hear about it as it progresses. Some of you are already in the design group, and we kind of, if you would like to get involved with that group, then either say so in the chat or email us afterwards, and there may be scope to get involved in that last design meeting before we go to planning. We'll share the planning application, and we're hoping that if you like what you see, that you will also add a supportive comment to the planning application, because we want to show the planners that there's a considerable amount of local support for this, given how much it's come from local people trying to meet the housing pressures in the area. And if you're just interested in getting involved in other ways or helping volunteering, you've heard from Chris about the amount of work that different people have put into this so far. We are volunteer run, and we'd love to have more hands on deck with anything from this technical design stuff to our comms and community engagement and the website and a whole variety of different things. So yeah, there's lots of ways to get involved if you're interested. Speaking of which, one way is to be a director of the CLT and be on the board, looking after the finances and taking the whole thing forward. And 4 of the directors, including myself, were first elected at our AGM in 2019, and we have terms of office, which mean that we now need to be re-elected to be able to continue on the board. And this is a quite straightforward procedure. I'll describe the 4 candidates that are standing, and then we'll take a vote on each in turn. And if you could, I'm going to use a screenshot, but if you could either have your camera on and raise your hand, or type into the chat if you don't want your camera on or it's not working or something like that. That's how I'm going to count the votes. And will be a simple for and against for each of the candidates, with a majority vote sufficient to re-elect them. So the four directors are myself, Chris Axon, who is chair of the CLT, Rob Shaw, who chairs the project committee which takes this particular project forward, and Bernard Humphrey Gaskin, who's a director who's waving, has been involved from the start as well. So I'd like to propose, for each one we need a proposal in a second. I can propose each, but if some other member could second each one we go through, and somebody else will need to propose me, obviously. But I'll start with Chris as chair. So I'd like to propose that we re-elect Chris to the board and as chair of the CLT. And would somebody second that?
I'll second.
Third second. And so could I take a vote, please, of everybody in favour of electing Chris, re-electing Chris to be chair of the board and director?
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, thanks. And anybody who would vote against that?
To the top division win over Chelsea, Marco Silva hoping to become the third.
Oh, we've got some football commentary. Great. Okay, great. So Chris is duly re-elected to the board. Congratulations, Chris. Next, we'll take Rob Shaw, who's not with us this evening. Rob's been very deeply involved in this project from the start. So could I have somebody to second Rob being elected? I'll take Emil. Just going to slightly random, just who I saw first. Thanks, Emil. Can I take all those in favour of Rob being re-elected to the board? Thank you. And all those against? Lovely. Congratulations, Rob. Third is Bernard Humphrey Gaskin, who's again been a director since the start. And could I have somebody to second him? I'll say Tim. And all those in favour of re-electing Bernard to the board? Thank you. All those against? Great, congratulations, Bernard. And then finally, myself, somebody other than me should propose me.
I'd like to propose you.
Joyce,
Tom?
thank you. And second? Let's go, Chris, spread it around. Great. So all those in favour of re-electing me to the board and as secretary to the company? Thank you. All those against? Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That's the very exciting formal business bit done. That's the board reconstituted. Other directors who are on this call are Vishal, who's away, Vishal, and Rory, who's been dropping in and out a bit, and Janet, who's having some sort of internet connection problems. Although we can get away from Janet, top of Janet's head. Janet. And we've also got Lola, who's not with us this evening either. You can find all the information about our board, about our minutes of our board meetings, about how we govern ourselves, our rules, all the policies, everything else on our website, where you can also join the CLT. So I'll stick that link into the chat. If you haven't joined already, you're very welcome to. And I think we'll close the meeting there. So thanks very much. Really lovely to see everyone, and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting and hearing your continued comments and input into this project as we go forward to the very exciting stage of submitting a planning application later this year.
Thanks,
Bernard.
Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks, Tom.
Bye.